Exactly, guys. Storm Spriggan Knuckle Unite. Simply the first Spriggan from the first season of Beyblade Burst. And I'm really excited for us to analyze this legendary Bayman because Spriggan is my favorite Bay in Beyblade Burst. And because of Shukurene, obviously, who is my favorite character of the entire generation of Beyblade Burst, man. And this here is the first version of him. So there's a lot we can analyze here to understand his initial concepts and remembering this Bay is a balance type. And in fact, it was the first balance type Bay in Beyblade Burst to be introduced. Really cool. Man, I know you guys must be saying, but isn't it Spryzen, not Spriggan that you say? Calm down, calm down. It doesn't matter how you want to call it, because both Spriggan and Spryzen are totally correct. Spriggan is the Takara Tomy version, or rather the Japanese version from the anime, and Spryzen is the Hasbro version from the dubbed anime that we watched here in the West. So the correct way actually to call it is Spriggan according to Takara Tomy, but for me, it doesn't really matter. Rising Spriggan, let's go, all right? All right, let's take it apart and analyze each piece. With our Bay disassembled, we have the three parts that make up our Spriggan: the layer, the disc, and the driver. I really love, man, this simple concept of Beyblade Burst, where there are only three parts, and I know that later they released more concepts adding more layers to Beyblade Burst. But it's really cool to see how it all started, when there were only three basic parts. All right, let's start with the layer. Starting here, we have our Storm Spriggan layer, which is a very beautiful layer. And I'll be honest with you, when I saw Blade Brainstorm come out back in 2014 to 2015, I didn't really like this dual layer concept, you know? Which, by the way, is one of the names of the system, where we have a translucent plastic layer and a more rigid plastic layer, right? Which is its raw color. I didn't like it back then, but now I see a lot of value in it. I actually think it's much more beautiful than the way I saw it back then. And man, it's really cool to see the details they add to this. Like, for example, Spriggan's own face right here, right? This little face with the yellow eyes really makes it stand out beautifully. We also have this flame sticker on the side that gives the Bay a really cool sense of brutality, making it look more aggressive and unique, right? I really love Spriggan's red colors, and the stickers add even more charm to it. It's a shame that it's a used Bay, right? As you can see, some of the stickers are already a bit worn out over time, but that's just part of it. But considering how old this Bay is, almost 10 years, it's actually really well preserved. But in terms of details, it's really beautiful. Now, in general terms, regarding what it's meant to do, it's a very simple Bay. But it has a very round layer here. Its contact points are quite rounded, nothing too aggressive. In other words, it's not a layer for attacking, but rather for counter-attacking, which is this red contact part. And the plastic contact area is smooth to absorb the impact, almost as if a defensive wall, so it already has a built-in defense concept in the layer. And this is the contact area that generates the clashes, right? It's right in the gap we have here. When you turn it upside down, you can see this gap better between the two contact points, which means that when the opponent's Bay fits in here, it gets stuck for a moment. In other words, it delivers a hit to the opponent's Bay, right? Or here as well, in this part, where the Bay can collide and land a small attack. So Storm Springer is not a layer focused on attack, but on stamina and defense, okay? So it's a pretty basic layer in terms of attributes, but it's really beautiful, by the way. A sad point about this layer actually is its little teeth, right? The burst lock teeth aren't that good compared, for example, to Valkyrie's, right? Because unfortunately, people didn't really like the layer precisely because of this lack of protection it had. So it would burst pretty easily. There are other layers worse than this one, obviously, when it comes to bursting. But unfortunately, Sprint didn't suffer much from these bursts, which is a shame. Right after that, we have our Knuckle disc, which is a really cool disc, and it's worth mentioning why it's called Knuckle. Knuckle is actually, in English, the name of these bones we have here in our hand, and that's also why Knuckles in Sonic is called Knuckles, because he has those spikes on this part of his fist. So the Knuckle disc is called Knuckle precisely because of this design we have, with these three prominent points, both on this part and also on the lower part, right? Well, this disc here is almost completely rounded. It's a disc more focused on defense than on attack, obviously, and it also has a bit of stamina to it. It's a somewhat heavy disc, though not as heavy as some others that were released later on. And we have these holes on the surface areas, as you can see. These holes help with the distribution, or rather the airflow through the disc, giving it a bit of resistance. But overall, it's a pretty basic disc that doesn't offer much except for the weight, which helps bring more centralization to this Bay. And finally, we have our Unite driver, which is a really cool driver. For those who came from Beyblade Metal Fight, in general, we have a tip that's actually quite similar to this one, which is the tip from Ray Striker, or Ray Unicorno anyway. Basically, it's a tip that has rubber around it, and in the center, there's a slightly more rounded plastic part. Well, what does that mean? The rubber part makes the tip have a more aggressive, faster movement pattern, typical of an attack-type Bey. So the rubber, depending on how you launch it, when it makes contact with the stadium, will make the tip, or rather the driver, spin in a more aggressive, faster way. But we have this plastic part on the inside, where this inner plastic part has more of a stamina movement pattern. So the base usually, depending on how you launch it, Spriggan will spin more aggressively at first, and then it will center itself in the stadium, adopting a stamina movement pattern, which combines these two concepts. So for those who came from Metal Fight Beyblade, you're already used to this, because Race Striker had a tip exactly like this Spriggan's driver. So let's assemble our Storm Spriggan here. Let's grab our layer. Man, Beyblade Burst is the easiest thing in the world, there's no mistake. So let's take our layer and turn it upside down. And now we're gonna grab our disc. For that, we place the disc into these two holes we have here. Just like this. And now we're going to grab our driver. Take the driver, fit it in, and twist it until it sinks in. When it turns and sinks in, that's when you need to press it. You press and turn it in the direction it goes. In this case, to the right. All done. There you go, AQB is assembled. And this is the Storm Spriggan Knuckle Unite. A balanced type Bey, being the first Bey of Shukuranite introduced in the anime, because there was a previous Spriggan released as a demo version for the Beyblade Burst system. Man, I think this Bey is cool. It's not one of the best. Unfortunately, it suffers a lot from bursting because of the small teeth. So much so that when we assembled it, you noticed it doesn't make a very loud click, precisely because its teeth aren't protected against bursting. But that's standard. Attack-type Beys will always have more of this protection than Beys of other types. Anyway, overall, I think it's a pretty cute Bey. I like the visual concept of the layer. I like it when we turn it to the side and see the contrast of the colors. Unfortunately, my tip here is more yellow than white because of time, so the rubber ended up turning yellowish. But even so, it's a really cool Bey where we have two movement patterns, one more aggressive with the rubber and the other focused more on stamina and its more central part. And the other is more focused on stamina with more centralization of the Bey. Well, overall, it's not such an amazing Bey. There have been better versions released over time. It's not that aggressive, but rather a Bey more for absorption and counterattacks, mixing various concepts of defense, stamina, and attack all in a single Bey. And I want to do the battle test with you, but before that, I want to ask for something very special. Well, before we do the battle tests, I want to ask you to leave your like and subscribe down below. It's really important for you to do that because it helps us a lot to keep making these videos, and especially become a member. By becoming a member, you'll help to... And especially become a member, man. By becoming a member, you'll be able to enter giveaways here on the channel and also help fund these videos so we can keep going, all right? So do this for us so we can keep making these videos. Now let's get to the battle tests of our legendary Storm Springer. To start off the battle test for Springer, I want to test him first against Wyvern, which is a defense type. So let's see how Springer, which is a balance type, does against our defense type Wyvern. Let's go. Alright, I'm going to launch Wyvern first, nice and straight. And also Spriggan straight, since there's no need to launch it at an angle here. Okay, let's see how this battle goes. Whoa. Man, wow, it really shined, didn't it? It knocked all its parts out of the arena, bursting in a spectacular way. What a hit. I'm even going to take our Spriggan apart here. Alright, let's do a test here between Raktivor, or Ragnarok, which is a stamina type, against our Storm Spriggan. Let's go. Okay, I'm going to launch Ragnarok first. I'm going to launch it really straight since it's a stamina type Beyblade, and now I'll launch Spriggan straight as well. Let's see if it can burst the same way it did with Wyvern, with Raktivor. But Raktivor is already a little bit better, in my opinion, with its little teeth compared to Wyvern, right? So let's see here. The real problem with it is that its layer is very prone to bursting Raktivor's, but so far it hasn't suffered anything. It's just losing stamina. The guy lost stamina. It's a stamina type Beyblade losing stamina to Spriggan, man. That's crazy. Victory goes to Spriggan. Well, the battle test I want to do here is our Spriggan against Odin, which is an attack type Beyblade. It'll be interesting to do this battle test between these two. Let's go. All right, I'm going to launch Spriggan first. I'll launch it straight. So far, that's been working. And now I'll launch our Odin, a little tilted. I like Odin because even though its pattern is aggressive for an attack type, it's not that out of control. It's actually easier to launch than Valtteri himself. Anyway, with the contact from the central plastic tip of our Spriggan, it's more centered, so there was no contact with the rubber, which is great so it doesn't lose stamina. But the hits that Odin is landing are throwing Spriggan off balance, leading to victory and bringing the win to our Odin, defeating Spriggan in a fabulous way, okay? He won in a really beautiful way, circling around until he found an opening and finished him off, draining his stamina. What a victory, huh? Well, another Bey I want to put up against our Spriggan is Orazus, which is a stamina type Bey. So I want to see how this beautiful Bey does against Spriggan. Let's go! Alright, I'll start by launching Orazus since it's a stamina type Bey, right? And now our Spriggan, here we go. The Spriggan Bey already locked in nicely, and this straighter launch of his is really good because it keeps him more contained, right? He doesn't get so out of control, but Spriggan's attacks are managing to destabilize Orazus' balance over there. Orazus isn't managing to handle it. Whoa. He proved me wrong. He proved me wrong. Orazus' wings burst Spriggan, bringing victory to this beautiful Bey. Well, to wrap things up, now we have to do a battle between Spriggan and Valtryek, obviously. We already did one of those in the Valtryek video, where Spriggan took the win. Will Valtryek get his revenge? Let's wait and see. Let's go. Alright, let's launch Spriggan straight, because I'm liking using it in a more controlled way. And now let's launch Valtryek. Whoa, what's that, Valtryek? What's going on, Valtryek? Did you lose control and go out of bounds, man? No, this one doesn't count. Let's do one more, because the final battle has to happen. Alright, let's launch Spriggan, and now let's launch Valtryek, okay? Alright, whoa. What a hit, guys. Man, wow, what a beautiful attack, man. Valtryek pulled off a comeback and got his revenge, since he had lost to Spriggan in his own video. Now Spriggan lost in his own video. What a beautiful thing, right? It's 1-1 if you look at the scores from the videos, man. Man, what a crazy hit from Valtryek. He landed an amazing shot on Spriggan's Spider-Man. What a win for Bowser. And well, guys, that was the Storm Spriggan test. This legendary. Hope enjoyed. It was one of the coolest battles to do. Leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time with a video. We're in this together. Let it rip!